What's going on, friends? Harley-Davidson made a huge mistake by eliminating their price point motorcycles. Now it is absolutely all or nothing. Harley-Davidson's price point motorcycles were a great way to get your ass in the seat of a Harley-Davidson, but at the same time still allowed Harley-Davidson to fork you for more money later. Price point Harley-Davidson motorcycles were a way for you to get into a big twin air-cooled Harley-Davidson for thousands of dollars less than what some of the other models cost. These were basically kind of stripped down motorcycles, so you did have to make some sacrifices. But in some cases, they really weren't that stripped back, depending on what you're wanting to do with the bike. Now, depending on what you wanted to do with the bike, this is where Harley-Davidson really trapped you into these motorcycles. They absolutely wanted you to fall into their trap when it came to a price point motorcycle. Guys, please don't forget, if you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. Price point Harley-Davidson motorcycles were a great way if you were paying cash for a Harley-Davidson to still get the bike you wanted. Of course, you're making some sacrifices, but you were still out of pocket a whole lot less money than you would be if you went to the next model up. Now, say maybe you were financing a new Harley-Davidson and you just couldn't come up with that extra bit of money to get that payment down to where you could afford it month to month. The price point bike with its lower cost was a great way for you to still get that bike, but not have to put as much money down and still have a monthly payment that you could afford from month to month. Now, with Harley-Davidson completely eliminating this motorcycles, we are left with a huge gap in the lineup where the bikes are extremely expensive and you really have no options to get into one without being out a bunch of money out of pocket or having a high monthly payment. A great example of the price point motorcycles was the Softail Standard from the twin cam years. These were excellent motorcycles. They were pretty well stripped back instead of getting the chromed out finishes, which would have been the big thing at the period that these bikes were around. You got some grayed out finishes. The engines were gray instead of chrome. Now, you would definitely pay thousands less than you would of the Softail Custom, which was all chromed out. It's the exact same bike, you just didn't have the color options and the chrome finishes, but you were on the road and that's all that mattered, and you saved some money buying that bike. Now, of course, as you all know, Harley-Davidson brought the Softail Standard back in the Milwaukee 8 years. They were only available in black and then later on the billiard gray. And instead of the 114 engine, you got the 107 engine and kind of the flat finishes. They were a little more glossy than the old gray ones on the original Softail Standard, but there was just a few sacrifices you had to make there. But the best part about the Softail Standard with the 107 at the time, you could get one of these for less than $14,000. And even when it went out in 2024, the bikes only went up about $1,000. They were still $15,000 with the 107 engine. Now, one of the best price point motorcycles ever, in my opinion, was the Electra Glide Standard. Yes, it had a solo seat. No, it didn't have a stereo. It did not have rear passenger pegs. But you got the Batwing fairing, you had the 107 engine, man, you're on that touring frame, and these bikes were about $18,000 brand new at the time. And at the time, that was a really damn good price because you were looking at about $22,000, $23,000 to actually get into a street glide or a road glide with the stereo. But this is where Harley-Davidson really kind of trapped you. And I would have to say that the Electra Glide Standard was one of the best models to really fall into Harley-Davidson's trap with if you weren't paying attention, if you weren't careful, and you got a little overzealous about what your expectations for the motorcycle actually were. Harley-Davidson also eliminated the road glide and the street glide. Not completely, but they eliminated what would have been your standard model. The only thing that you could get now is what used to would have been the special. Now, the standard model was about $3,000 or $4,000 cheaper than the specials. Of course, you had to sacrifice with a 107 engine, with the chrome finishes, but you did get the stereo. Now, granted, the infotainment system on it, it wasn't as fancy as the one on the special, but you're saving about $4,000 right there, and you still get virtually the same bike, just with a smaller engine, a little less fancy stereo, and chrome instead of black. But when it came to price, that standard was about $23,000, and then the specials were running for about $27,000. So you're still saving a lot of money there, and at least you had an option to get on the bike you want and still be out less money out of pocket. So guys, price point Harley-Davidsons were always a great way to save some money and still get on the motorcycle that you want, and Harley-Davidson completely eliminated it. But these bikes were in reality kind of a big trap for you, because you buy one of these at that price point, Harley-Davidson's whole shtick here was to get you to go over the parts and accessories counter and build this bike into what you could have already bought. Harley-Davidson wanted you to buy a 2-up seat. They wanted you to buy a blackout engine kit. They wanted you to get all of this stuff in their accessories at the parts counter and have it installed in your dealer. Now, of course, you bought a 2-up seat. Well, you need a passenger peg kit for the back. And if you've ever looked in the catalog, those are pretty pricey just for mounting brackets and some pegs. Even worse, if you had the 107 engine, you might look back there and say, oh man, maybe I ought to get the Stage 4 Screamin Eagle 114 kit for my 107. Or heck, I saved so much money, why don't I just go ahead and get a crate motor and then pay to have my dealer install it? That was the whole trap that Harley-Davidson wanted you to fall into, and one of the worst bikes about that would have been the Electra Glide Standard. So Harley-Davidson did have some great lower cost options, but as we all know, the house always wins, and that's exactly what they wanted you to do, was pay less for the bike up front, but go upfit it basically into what you could have already bought in the next model line up, and already had all that stuff for the most part, and then started accessorizing it from there. So essentially, instead of an Electra Glide Standard, by the time you did all that, you would have been in better shape just popping for the standard Street Glide or Road Glide, or if you tried to do all this to a Softail Standard, you might as well have just got a Fat Bob at that point. So when you were looking at these motorcycles, you really wanted to go in knowing the expectations of what you wanted to do to the motorcycle, or else you're going to end up in a big hole. Price point motorcycles definitely had their place for anybody wanting to buy a new Harley-Davidson, but they were very realistic about their expectations and what they were going to do to the bike. Now, the other point to that is, yes, you can pay less up front, get your payment down, or be out less money out of pocket if you were paying cash, and they did allow you the ability to have, ride, and enjoy the motorcycle, and if you did want to accessorize them and do a bunch of engine work to them, it allowed you to be able to do that a little bit over time, because I understand not everybody can go out and just flop down $100 bills and get it all done at once, or you can't exactly make the monthly payment by doing that and financing it all in. I absolutely hate the fact that Harley-Davidson took that away from us. They basically said, we don't want to sell to you poors when it comes to Harley-Davidson. We just want the people that got money and can make the monthly payment and charge them 30 grand. And then we want the people that could put an extra $5,000, $10,000 into our $30,000 motorcycle. I love the price point Harley-Davidsons, but I want to know what you guys think. Do you think the price point Harley-Davidsons were actually worth the money? Or do you guys feel like they really didn't have a place in the lineup and you should have just went out and got like the standard model of the Road Glide, the Street Glide, or something like the Street Bob? But guys, I want your thoughts and opinions on that. Would you have bought a standard model, or would you went ahead and pop for the next one up? But anyhow, guys, that's all I've got for you this week. If you guys enjoyed the video, please don't forget to hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. But till next week, guys, you stay safe on the streets, ride smart, dodge those cars, and I'll catch you guys back here next week with a brand new video. Thanks for watching.